Hello there, welcome to another special edition of African Football Archives, and today we are looking at 10 most accomplished African national teams of all time. Please don't forget to subscribe, like and share. The immense breakthrough of African national teams through the years has been nothing short of a stupendous tale. The exploits of a few teams have placed Africa on the world map. The term accomplishment is not solely based on the number of trophies garnered, but also the remarkable feats achieved. We have highlighted in the criteria necessary to rank Africa's football powerhouses. In all fairness, and to avoid bias and agenda, we will look at total African Cup of Nations wins, performances at the World Cup, successful players abroad, number of African Players of the Year awards, cultural impact and fan base. With that being said, let's go over the 10 most accomplished African national teams of all time. First on our list of 10 most accomplished African national teams of all time is South Africa, a nation thoroughly engrossed and intertwined with the history of football on this great continent. The list of achievements for South Africa is pretty long and impressive, especially when you consider the fact that they gave their counterparts a 30-year head start, as they weren't allowed by FIFA to participate in international football due to political reasons. South Africa played their first international game after readmission into FIFA in 1992 and played their first African Cup of Nations as host of the 1996 edition, which they went on to win. This win announced South Africa as Africa's latest football powerhouse in the process by shooting up to 16th on the FIFA rankings. The upward trajectory continued for South Africa, having finished second at the 1998 African Cup of Nations. They also qualified for their first ever World Cup in 1998, where they crashed out in the group stage after a loss to host France, followed by draws against Denmark and Saudi Arabia. South Africa continued to go strong by finishing third in the 2000 African Cup of Nations, meaning they had now won a medal in each of their first 3 Nations Cup appearances. South Africa also qualified for the 2002 World Cup, but could only manage 1 draw and 2 losses, thereby crashing out at the group stages of the tournament. South Africa qualified for the African Cup of Nations 7 more times in 2002, 2004, 2006, 2008, 2013, 2015 and 2019, but without much success. They also hosted the 2010 World Cup, where they beat France but could only manage to finish in 3rd place in their group, thereby crashing out in the first round. In recent memory, Tunisia sent shockwaves throughout Africa by winning the African Cup of Nations in 2004, a win that came despite the expected high level of performances from Cameroon, Senegal and Nigeria. The North African country has every reason to thank Nigeria, though. It was the Super Eagles of Nigeria that knocked out the almighty Cameroon at the quarter-final stage of that African Cup of Nations, thanks to a free kick from JJ Okocha and a goal from John Utaka. Tunisia would then go to defeat Nigeria at the semi-final stage of the tournament and eventually win the tournament. Tunisia is one of those teams that has never really dominated African football. However, they've always seemed to come up in the discussion of best teams on the continent, but that is because of their consistency. They've appeared in 19 African Cup of Nations tournaments, including every single edition in the last decade, winning just once in 2004. The Carthage Eagles have also qualified for the World Cup on 5 separate occasions, the 3rd highest among African teams, but they have never made it past the group stage. After some years in the dark, they appear to be back on the rise again. In 2018, Tunisia earned a FIFA ranking of 14th in the world and finished 4th at the 2019 African Cup of Nations, where they lost the 3rd place game to Nigeria. Tunisia would return to the African Cup of Nations by participating in the 2021 edition, but could only manage to reach the quarter-final stage, where they lost to Burkina Faso. In terms of the African Player of the Year award, Tunisia has only one winner, who is Tarak Diab, who won it in 1977. In a generation that was full of African superstars, the Ivorians could boast of having the best squad for most of the late 2000s and the early 2010s. Still, history will always remember them for massively underachieving. The golden generation of Ivorian football from the 2006 to the 2014 squad was packed with players such as Didier Drogba, Didier Zokora, Yaya and Kolo Toure, Emmanuel Eboué, Gervinho, Solomon Kalou, Cheikh Tiote, Max Gradel, Wilfred Bony and many more. It's a huge surprise. All they could achieve during that period was one African Cup of Nations trophy and 3 consecutive group stage exits at the World Cup. They won the 2015 African Cup of Nations in the final year of their golden generation, although without Didier Drogba, with the only other one making way back in 1990. They participated in 3 more African Cup of Nations finals in 2017, 2019 and 2021, but without much success. There's no look back at Ivorian football without thinking of all they could have achieved or wondering why they didn't work out quite as well as everyone expected. Even FIFA rated them highly as they peaked at 12th position on the FIFA World Rankings in 2013. In terms of winning the African Footballer of the Year award, Côte d'Ivoire has a rich history, with Yaya Toure winning the award 4 times in a row, while Didier Drogba was named the best footballer in Africa twice in 2006 and 2009. Morocco is always brought up in any conversation involving African football due to the pedestal they are placed on. Captained by Badou Zaki, Morocco became the first African country to finish on top of a group stage at a World Cup. This incredible feat took place at the 1986 World Cup. A win against Portugal and 2 goalless draws against England and Poland saw them through to the round of 16, which is another milestone on its own. The Atlas Lions have participated in 5 World Cup tournaments in 1970, 1986, 1994, 1998 and 2018, and they have also qualified for the upcoming 2022 World Cup. Cameroon, with 8 qualifications, are the only African country to have qualified for more World Cup tournaments than Morocco. Morocco won their first and only African Cup of Nations title in 1976. However, since their win, Morocco's best performance was only runner-up in 2004. Morocco has therefore become a perennial underachiever in the African Cup of Nations in spite of their rich and prestigious records. In total, they have qualified for the African Cup of Nations 18 times. Their best FIFA rankings came in 1998 when they were placed at 10th position. In terms of the African Player of the Year award winners, Morocco has 4. Ahmed Faras won it in 1975. Mohamed Tomoumi in 1985, Badou Ezaki in 1986 and Mustafa Hadji in 1998. The best years of Algerian football have been recent, adding hardware to their already impressive trophy cabinet. The North African team has always been in the shadow of Egypt and Tunisia until a new generation of superstars scattered around the biggest clubs in Europe arose. This new wave of Algerian players has not only made them the best in the north, but the best on the continent as well. The Desert Foxes, as they are known, have won 2 African Cup of Nations titles, the first of which they won as host in 1990 and the second coming in 2019 on Egyptian soil. Their World Cup pedigree is not too shabby either. Algeria qualified 4 times for the world's biggest tournament, even beating defending champions West Germany in their World Cup debut in 1982. Controversially, Algeria left the tournament in the group stages after a blatant bout of match fixing by West Germany and Austria. The 1986 World Cup went the same way for them, but no controversy this time. They were just simply knocked out in the group stages. It would take 24 years for them to qualify for another World Cup in 2010. They again crashed out in the group stages, this time failing to score a single goal. The 2014 World Cup produced a much better outing as they were knocked out by eventual champions Germany in extra time of their round of 16 game. It was an impressive tournament run fueled by quality players such as Riyad Mahrez, Sofiane Feghouli, Islam Slimani, Yassine Brahimi and others. After climbing to 15th in the world, according to the FIFA rankings, the team would suffer another decline for the next 4 years before then rising up again to win the 2019 African Cup of Nations. In total, they have qualified for 19 African Cup of Nations finals. In terms of the African Player of the Year award winners, Algeria has 4. Ali Benchaki won it in 1978, Lagda Belloumi in 1981, Rabah Majeh in 1987 and Riyad Mahrez in 2016. Senegal is one of the few teams that make this list because of their more recent exploit rather than pedigree or title-winning credentials. Although they have only won 1 trophy as a national team, they have had some memorable squads in the past that qualifies them for this list. The 2002 squad, led by the likes of Aliou Cissé, El Hadji Diouf and Khalilou Fadiga, made a run to the AFCON final for their first time in their history, where they lost on penalties to Cameroon. The star-studded Teranga Lions would go on to make their World Cup debut a few months later. Impressively, they defeated France in their opening game and became only the second African team to reach the World Cup quarterfinals then, before Ghana became the third in 2010. However, they were eventually knocked out of the tournament by Turkey. Senegal, however, continued to fail to make any noticeable impact on African and world football at large until the late 2000s, when the new generation of superstars such as Sadio Mane, Kalidou Koulibaly, Idrissa Gueye, Keita Balde, Cheikhou Kouyaté and Ismail Sarr led them to the quarterfinal exit in 2017. The squad would go on to qualify for the 2018 World Cup in Russia, where they were controversially knocked out of the group stage. Recently, they put together an exciting run to the African Cup of Nations final in 2019, where they suffered a heartbreaking loss to Algeria. With captain of the former generation now in charge as coach of the Golden Age, and with Sadio Mane in the form of his life, Senegal were able to win the 2021 African Cup of Nations after a series of heartbreaking near misses. In total, Senegal qualified for 16 African Cup of Nations finals and 3 World Cups, including the upcoming 2022 World Cup in Qatar. In terms of the African Player of the Year winners, Senegal has 2. El Hadji Diouf won it in 2001 and 2002, and Sadio Mane in 2019 and 2022. Unfortunately, Africa will always remember the Black Stars of Ghana as the team that almost made history. They were one spot kick away from beating Uruguay and becoming the first African team to reach the World Cup semi-finals, but top scorer Asamoah Gyan blazed his penalty over the bar. However, Ghanaian football is much bigger than that one painful memory in 2010. The Black Stars remain one of the most successful teams in African football history, having won the African Cup of Nations 4 times in 1963, 1965, 1978 and 1982. The highest they have been on the FIFA rankings was 14th in 2008, after their impressive feat of winning every qualifying match en route to participation in the South Africa 2010 World Cup. They also played at the 2006 and 2014 World Cup tournaments. Asamoah Gyan holds the records for most appearances with 109 caps and most goals with 51 goals for the Black Stars. He is another member of an impressive cast of players who have represented Ghana, including Michael Essien, Suli Muntari, John Mensah, Kwadwo Asamoah, Kevin Prince Boateng, Andre and Jordan Ayew. In terms of the African Player of the Year winners, Ghana has 3 winners. Ibrahim Sande won it in 1971, Abdul Razak in 1978, and Abedi Pele in 1991, 1992 and 1993. Egypt has the honor of being the first African country to participate in the World Cup, which was in the year 1934. Dubbed the Pharaohs, they are known for their prowess in the African scene. The North African side have won the highest number of African Cup of Nations titles with 7, including 3 consecutively in 2006, 2008 and 2010. They have made the most appearances in the African Cup of Nations history. Despite Egypt's dominance on the continental circuit, they are unable to replicate their feat on the global scene. They have qualified for just 3 editions of the World Cup in 1934, 1990 and 2018. Egypt is also the first African team to play at the Olympics, but they have never been medaled. Their highest FIFA ranking is 9th. They also reached the African Cup of Nations finals in 2021, but lost to Senegal. In terms of the African Player of the Year award winners, Egypt has 2. Mohamed El Khatib won it in 1983 and Mohamed Salah won it in 2017 and 2018. Nigeria is the African team with the highest FIFA rank. They were ranked 5th in 1994 after a decent outing at the 1994 FIFA World Cup, which doubles as their debut. They were led by the late Rashidi Yekini, who scored Nigeria's first goal of the tournament. The Super Eagles have been renowned for their consistency over the decades. Since their debut in 1994, they have not missed any World Cup tournaments except for the 2006 and the 2022 editions. The Super Eagles have the second most appearances for an African team at the World Cup with 6 appearances. Their best result is at the round of 16 stage, which was attained in 1994, 1998 and 2014 tournaments. Nigeria is the only African team to win an Olympic medal in all colors: gold in Atlanta 1996, silver in Beijing 2008, and bronze in Rio 2016. Coincidentally, Nigeria have won the African Cup of Nations title 3 times, in 1980, 1994, and 2013. In terms of the African Player of the Year award winners, Nigeria has 3 winners. Rashidi Yekini won it in 1993, Cameroon Nwankwo in 1996 and 1999, and Victor Ikpeba in 1997. Cameroon is no doubt the most accomplished African team ever. Their 8 appearances at the World Cup is a record for African teams. The indomitable Lions are among a few African powerhouses whose display of dexterity coincidentally outweighs internationally. Cameroon are the first African team to qualify for the quarterfinals at a World Cup tournament, which till to date remains their best ever result. Ever since that awesome feat at the 1990 World Cup, they have failed to get past the group stage despite the emergence of sensational players like Samuel Eto'o. In the Olympic scene, Cameroon won the gold medal in Sydney 2000, becoming only the second African team after Nigeria's 1996 win to win the Olympic gold medal. They have won the African Cup of Nations title 5 times in 1984, 1988, 2000, 2002, and 2017. Their highest FIFA ranking is 11th. In terms of the African Player of the Year award winners, Cameroon has 7 winners. Roger Miller won it in 1976, Thomas Nkono in 1979 and 1982, Jean Manga Ongwene in 1980, Theophile Abega in 1984, Patrick Mboma in 2000, Samuel Eto'o in 2003, 2004, 2005, and 2010. This has been a list of 10 most accomplished African national teams of all time. If there are any great national teams that you think we should have included on the list, please feel free to let us know in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. That should be all for now. Till next time, it's goodbye.